Sorry, I had you muted the whole time. Good morning. This is In Tune. I'm Leon Harrell. Let's get right into it. We're going to talk about intervallic reading, and I'll explain what that is today. And we're also going to talk about, how to best participate, like in our live stream on YouTube. Because that was a question I got in the mailbag. So I actually want to start with that first. And then our tune for today is Auld Lang Syne, which is, should all acquaintance be forgot. It's the New Year's song. Everybody knows that. So we're going to look at that. So before we get started, I'm going to put on my headphones because I jumped in my seat before I was ready. And then we will talk about in a show on YouTube like this. So every week we talk about intentional practice. How do you get better at playing music? We focus primarily on playing the piano. But really the focus is how do you make steady improvement every week, especially if you don't particularly have a music teacher, you don't really have a background, maybe you didn't take lessons as a child or something like that. And for today's topic, I want to talk about intervallic reading, which is something I discovered when I was in probably my master's degree. I have a bachelor's, a master's, and almost a doctorate in music composition. So I don't want you to wait 20 years to learn this very simple technique that it just never was told to me. So before we jump into all that today, I just want to say hello in the comments. Good morning, David. Good morning, Zauberhaft. And, from the Netherlands. That's awesome. I have a friend here in town, Ellen. She's from the Netherlands. And let's see. I think that's all I see in the chat at the moment, but we always have people join us kind of as the live stream gets going. So, first things first. How do you participate in a live stream like this? So what we will do, we'll look at some sheet music in a moment, and we'll also look at the piano keyboard in a moment. But ideally, when you participate in this show every week, all you really need to do is set up your computer or your iPad just in some position to where it's comfortable to watch the computer while you're at your keyboard. Let's say you don't have a keyboard. How do you participate then? Essentially, we go through very similar exercises every week where we count rhythms, we clap rhythms, we say the names of the notes, we might sing the names of the notes, and these are the core crucial skills to playing any instrument. So even if you don't have an instrument, you just follow along with what we're doing on the show. We do use a software every week called Piano Marvel, and I talk about it every week. So I'll throw a link up on the screen. If you do want to follow along with what we do, you can visit oneminutemusiclesson.com/toolbox, and you'll see a link where you could download Piano Marvel. That will also allow you to get a 20% discount if you decide to continue a subscription, but it's a 30-day free trial. We use that software because, number one, I personally think it's just the best interactive tool for learning piano. There's a lot of these kind of apps on the market. There's other apps that may be prettier. Not to say Piano Marvel's not an attractive software. I think it is, but I've seen others that look more slick, but pedagogically, or like the teaching behind them is just not there. So that's why I recommend that. So if you want to give that a try, you can certainly follow along with us every week doing that, but you don't need to have it installed to follow along with the lesson itself. Okay, but again, that's oneminutemusiclesson.com/toolbox. You'll see a link. You can do that. So outside of that, the participation is in real time. So if you watch the show we do every Saturday, 10 a.m., clap along, count along, whatever instruction we're at that point, you will gain something every single week just by doing that, regardless if you have an instrument or not. So the topic at hand today is going to be intervallic reading. How do you read from note to note to note using the intervals or the space in between the notes on the staff? I'm going to open up Piano Marvel, and I'm doing all this on the fly today, so we're going to try this from I'm just going to do this from my computer on Safari. Piano Marvel is pretty awesome because it works on any computer that has an internet connection, which also means that it works on your iPhone, your iPad, like basically any device. But they do have specific apps for iPhone and iPad. If you, I've never done it on an Android. You probably can. I just have never done that. But I'm going to be using the desktop version this morning. It does tend to run a little bit slower when I'm live streaming, but you know, we'll be fine. So I'm just going to get logged in here. I'm going to switch over to that. And let's take a quick look at here. Well, you can see the top of my head now. That's attractive. And Piano Marvel. So let me switch that camera so we're not watching my head the whole time. Let's see, bear with me. Normally I'm a lot more prepared than this. Let's switch to... We're just going to hide this camera. Well, you know, just to save time, let's not worry about that. We will try a different view altogether. All right, and while I'm doing that, let's chit-chat in the comments. Good morning, Sandy. Welcome back. I see you. And yeah, just some quick hellos there. So let's see. You know what? We're just going to struggle through it, and you'll watch the top of my head. It won't kill you. Because I want you to see this app here. So let's see if we can just make that fill the screen. And we'll turn this off. We'll turn that off. And... you know, the best I can, yeah, there it goes. Okay, great. So when we're in Piano Marvel, we're going to go ahead and open up today's tune, which is Auld Lang Syne. You can just search for that in the search bar of the app. Just to save time, I'm going to jump right in it today. And I've already put that in my favorites. And I'm going to do this version from, there's two that are really like pretty good for beginners. One is this level 2 More Christmas Piano Solos. And it is, if you're looking to read notes better and work on maybe your coordination of like your left and your right hand at the same time, if that's like a real struggle for you, I think this tune is a pretty good place to start because it's relatively simple, but it's using both hands to play the tune itself. So that's the one we're going to start with today. There's also another version from this Alfred All-in-One adult course, which is really one of my favorite piano method books. So we're going to click on that one, and within there you will find Auld Lang Syne, I think page 132, 123. This version is, you know, it's relatively just as simple, but you'll notice in the left-hand part, there's chords, there's multiple notes played at one time, whereas the right-hand part, that top staff, that is all the melodies in the right hand. So decide for yourself, what is your goal for working on reading the music? Are you trying to learn more about coordination, left and right hands together? If so, start with the first piece I showed you. If your goal is more, how do I read chords, or, you know, how can I only just play with my right hand? I'm a total beginner. I can't take everything in. This second one is actually easier to read because the entire melody's in the right hand. So you can make your own decision on that as far as what you prefer to practice over the week, but we're going to start with this one that puts the melody in both hands. Okay, and I'm going to talk you through intervallic reading. So to load this up, Piano Marvel has two different modes to it. So you can do, You can read the whole piece at one time. You could chop it into different parts if you want to break down the exercise if the whole piece is too challenging. You could do it in what's called minced mode, where they break down, the left and the right hand in even smaller chunks. But for today's purpose, we're going to do the chopped measures 1 through 8, 80 beats per minute, which is a pretty comfortable tempo. Again, I always say when you sight read or you're reading music, you always want to do this at a tempo that's comfortable for yourself. So let's see, I'm just going to add one more thing to our view here, which is show the current application, zoom there, and I'm just going to add my camera in. If I can quickly add my FaceTime camera right there, hello, and that'll get us through today's show. So what we're going to do is look at, let's keep it simple. Let's do one staff at a time. So we're going to start with this right hand, starting in measure 2, and we're just going to read the intervals. So what do I mean by that? An interval, I'm going to grab my whiteboard. An interval is the space between 2 notes. So I'm going to switch to my webcam view. All right, and I got a cool little whiteboard so I can demonstrate some things a little bit easier. So when we're looking at the musical staff, I'm going to draw this pretty large just so we can see it pretty easy. When we're looking at a musical staff, and that's backwards, so let's see if we can just fix that real quick. All right, and if you've been following my show for 4 months now, you'll know that it's generally, we're not this uncoordinated. But we're making it happen this morning. Okay, there we go. Okay, so when we're looking at the staff, all I want you to focus on is the distance between the 2 notes. So for example, let's say we have a note here, and we have a note there, maybe one here, and maybe one there. Okay, it doesn't matter if you know what the notes are. It doesn't matter what direction these stems are, up and down. All of that's irrelevant. All we care about is where's the dot, and is that dot in a space, like an empty white part, or is there a line going through it? So just very quickly, this one's on a space, this one's on a line, that's on a space, that's on a space, okay? But what we're focusing on is counting the number of lines and spaces between the notes. Now what's tricky about that is you always start on the number 1 and you always start on the note. So I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So here's our first note, so that's the number 1. And then as we go up, the next line is 2, the next space is 3, the next line is 4. So altogether, the distance between this note and this note is 4. Okay, so I'll do it a little bit slower. You start on the note with the number 1, and then we just count every line and space is the next number. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Now there's a lot more to intervals. That's not the whole shebang, but that's all we really need to know to do intervallic reading at the piano, and I'll show you why. So when we look at this, the distance between the first 2 notes is 4. The distance between the next set of notes is 2, because remember we start with 1 on the note, and then we count to the next note. So 1, 2 for the next note, okay? And then the distance between the last 2 notes is 5, okay? So altogether we've got 4, 2, 5 is the distance, okay? That's the concept. So we're going to put it into action now, looking at the keyboard and looking at this tune from Piano Marble. So let's first look at our keyboard for just a moment, and I may have to rejigger. Oh no, this is pretty good. That's not bad at all. Okay. So let's look at that example we did. The first note was F. All right. which it doesn't matter what the note was because I want you to focus on the numbers. So the first note was F. All right, and we went up. It was 4, 2, 5 was the intervals. 4 up, 2 down, 5 up. All right, so that's literally what we play on the keyboard. So if we start from here and count up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's the 4. So first note, up 4. Next note is down 2, so 1, 2. And then the last note was up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So I'm very much simplifying the process. So we're starting on, they're all going to be white keys. Doesn't matter what the sharps and flats say. When we read the intervals, we're thinking in white keys only because we're reducing, we're constraining the visual information and the some physical motion at the keyboard by only focusing our attention on the white keys, and we're visually eliminating the black keys for now. Okay, so let's look at our example on the whiteboard. All right, so I think I can position that where you see both a little bit. Okay, so our first note, this is treble clef, right here, treble clef. Treble clef is called the G clef because this little spot here is the G line. You'll see it swirls around the G line multiple times. So the note on that line is G, and I know that this note is F. And again, that's not the point of the lesson. We're not learning how to read notes per se. We're learning how to read intervals. So this first note is F, and again, I'll play that on my keyboard. I'll sort of position that where maybe we can see both at the same time. Not bad right there. Okay, so we're going to just read note by note, interval by interval. So you always start by placing your hand or your finger on the first note, whatever that may be. All right, and then we're just going to read the interval. Up 4, down 2, up 5. Okay. Now the last part of the process, because of course there are sharps and flats in music, we have to account for that. Next we have to think about how are we going to alter that white key. Okay, so this particular tune, Auld Lang Syne, it's actually in the key of F, but in the software here, it's the key signature is C major. We'll talk about that too. But we'll know that the B's in this piece are B flats. So when we look back at our keyboard, okay, we talked about this last week. We want to think about all the white keys on the keyboard just as levers. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so imagine this lever here is pointing to B. Okay? If the note was B flat, I want you to think about the lever bending or twisting, and my camera's a mirror, so look at my hands down there. Bending or twisting to the left. So flats lean to the left, and sharps lean to the right. And you know what? Just to keep it simple, let's mirror that camera so it'll do the same thing. So flats lean to the left, sharps lean to the right. So imagine your lever can only point to either the white note or the sharp or the flat. There's only 3 positions for this lever that we're imagining, okay? So B flat is twisted to the left, all right? So now all the B's that we play will be B flats. Why am I telling you to think of it as a lever instead of just a different note? Maybe you know there's 12 different keys in every octave of the keyboard and yada, yada, yada. There's so many ways to think of music theory and the piano and the keyboard, and there's hundreds of ways to learn this material. But I have found that the simplest way is to think about the piano keyboard very similarly to the way a pedal harp works. And you may not know what a pedal harp is, but it's designed to only have 7 strings in every octave, which corresponds to the 7 white keys on the keyboard. And in order to play the sounds of these black keys on a pedal harp, you have to physically press a pedal to change the length of the string, and that turns, you know, for example, your B string into a B flat string. So the consequence of that is that in pedal harp music, we're not going to play a B natural and a B flat at the same time because that string has been changed. It's not possible. Now there's ways around that because we could take the A string and turn it to sharp so it will sound just like a B flat, and that's how, when you compose music for a pedal harp, that's how you work around that. But when I learned that throughout my composition studies, I have degrees in composition, it revolutionized the way I thought about the piano keyboard, because no longer was I struggling to read 12 notes in every octave as 12 distinct pieces of information. It's instantly reduced to 7 pieces of information. And when you realize that there's a very small percentage of music that's going to have, for example, a B and a B flat played at the same time. Yes, it's possible. Will you see it a lot? No, you won't see it a lot. So we're just going to discard that. So this lever concept came out of that, and I talk about that in my book. I'll throw a link up real quick. If you are someone who's wanting to learn how to read music, I've written a book, How to Read Music Easily in 30 Days. It goes through a lot of techniques like I'm talking to you about that are not... these are not typical standard things you're going to learn in piano lessons. I myself took piano lessons for, 20, 25 years. I never had a teacher explain it that way because I didn't learn it until I was in my composition degree learning about other instruments. I was learning to apply concepts from other instruments to the keyboard. Long story short, if you're looking to learn how to read music, you'll enjoy that book because it will talk about lots of techniques that simplify the visual information, the physical information of playing piano, and other instruments too. It's not just for piano. So if you're interested, check that out. But where I'm going with that is this lever technique really reduces the amount of information we're trying to do when we sight read or when we return to a piece that we've played before. You're still reading the music, okay? So how does that relate to intervallic reading? Well, we want to just apply the lever to the white notes. So I'm going to talk you through what does that mean. Okay, so here's our musical example again. All right, so now we know that, I'm going to make a little visual guide here. Now we know that every note on this line, this is our B line of the treble clef. You know, I'll add these notes in because God knows if you're brand new, you're probably not really following today's lesson. It's not as tidy as I like. All right, so I'll put the names of the notes on the side. That'll help you if you're pretty new to this idea. But this is our B line, and it's been converted to a B flat because of the key signature. All right, so when we get to this note, we know that it's going to be flatted. We're going to have a lever, just in our mind. It's just a mental idea. But I actually use paper ones in my lessons just so you can visualize it. And the lever has been twisted from the natural position, or the white key position, over to the left. All right? So that will make this note a B flat. Okay? We're still going to read the distance between the notes as 4, 2, 5. All right? But this time, we're just going to know that our lever's been twisted and all the B's are B flats. So I'm not necessarily thinking, oh, that's a B flat. I'm just thinking all the levers for B's have been twisted, so there are no more B naturals to choose from. I'm not deciding is that B natural or B flat. I know before I play it that that was the only choice to consider. And yes, that will take you a moment to adjust if you've never tried that, and that's a totally foreign concept if you've never heard of it before. So it takes a little practice to get used to it. But it's far superior to thinking of the whole keyboard as 12 distinct keys, and the black keys can be named 2 different things, a sharp or a flat. So now you've got 17 options to choose from. But you can also have flats and sharps on the white keys, the E sharp and the F flat, although they're rare, they happen, like yada, yada, yada. The list goes on and on. So when you're learning music, it starts to feel really overwhelming to like piece all this stuff together. But I can tell you, I've never seen another person explain it this way, but once I learned it through the pedal harp, it just totally reduces how much you have to think about. Okay, so I've said that a couple times, you know that. Okay, so now we're going to read this again. Okay, and we're just going to do the same intervallic reading. So I'm going to kind of hold my whiteboard over here so you can see at the same time. Okay, so again, the first note was F. I'm setting my lever for B to be B flat. Okay, so the only keys I can play are white keys unless the lever is telling me otherwise. That's the reason I'm using the lever. Okay, so we start on the starting note, which is F, and we're going up by 4. So 1, 2, 3, and not 4 on B because our lever's there. It's B flat. So starting note up 4, down 2. So we start on the note, B flat is 1, and then down another one to 2. Again, the only choices are the white keys, so we're not even considering this key. All right, so up 4, down 2, up 5. Okay, if you have questions on the concept, jump in the chat, let me know right now, because before we read the tune, I want to make sure we've sort of clarified the concept. It's not terribly challenging to understand, but if you are new to it, it can certainly be foreign. Okay, if you feel like you did understand it, let me know in the chat. Because it's important that I get feedback from the folks attending, because otherwise I'll have no idea if you got it or not. Oh, cool. David says very clear. Okay. Again, if you didn't understand it, let me know. We'll reinforce it as we go. Zauberhoff says, I don't know which version you play. And Zauberhoff, I may not be understanding your question 100%. Oh, cool. Sandy says, I got it. Zauberhoff, when you say, I don't know which version you play, when you say the word version, can you explain what you mean by that? I'm thinking what you mean, maybe like the distinction between B and B flat, what version of the key, but you know, sometimes these comments get lost in translation. So if you can rephrase that a little bit, we'll tackle that question. Okay. Let's look at our piece. Okay, and I'm going to, I'm going to switch, and maybe Zauberhoff, this is what you're asking. I'm actually going to switch to the other piece. I think it will be a lot clearer to understand this concept. Because like I said in the beginning, the melody's all in one hand, and it's a lot easier for a beginner to play music where the melody's all in one hand. I mean, it's a lot easier for a professional too. You don't have to just be a beginner for it to be easier. But this particular concept works extremely well when the melody's all in one spot. So we're going to look at this. We're just going to do the chopped measures 1 through 4 to get started. Okay, so that first note is C, and you'll see the graphic there, like where is this at on the keyboard? That's middle C. And we're just going to let's see, Zauberhoff is saying, which version on Piano Marvel didn't see the F sign B flat? 1030. Well, I'll tell you, the version of the software, which I don't think what you're asking, I'm using the desktop version of the software. I think what you're asking is which version of the tune. So if we go back to the menu very quickly, you'll see that if you search for Alfred's Basic Adult All-in-One Course, or you can just type the word Alfred. There's just a couple books with that title. I'm going to do the one from Alfred, and this example is page 123. Okay? Good question. Okay? So we're going to look at, in the practice mode, chopped, measures 1 through 4, and we're going to read the intervals before we do anything at all with the keyboard. Okay, awesome. I think you got it. Excellent, Zauberhoff. So our note starts on C. Okay? And we're just going to read the intervals together. So from C to the next note is up 4. All right? We repeat the same notes. We can just say same. All right? If you're going to be technical, that's a unison, or an interval of P1, a perfect unison. But, you could just say the word same. All right, F is the same. Now we're up 3, we're down 2, down 2, up 2, up 2, down 3, the same, up 3, up 3. Okay, so I'm going to just play this on the keyboard. All right, I don't have a great view that shows the keyboard and the software like today, so let's take it slow. I'll show you the keyboard first. All right, and you're going to start on middle C, which is right in the middle of your keyboard. I'll put a little pointer here just so you can find it more easily. Middle C is always, you find the middle 2 black keys in the middle of the keyboard, no matter the size. And then you just go over to the left, just one little note, middle C. That's the starting position. And as I say the numbers up, 2, down, 4, whatever I'm saying, just reproduce that on your keyboard. If you don't have a keyboard, try to say the numbers with me in rhythm. I'll read it in rhythm, okay? All right, so here we go. All right, so just focusing on reading the intervals. Okay, we start on middle C, and we'll take it real slow. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. C is the first note, and now it's up 4, 2, same, up 3, down 2, down 2, up 2, up 2, down 3, same, up 3, up 3, up 2. So that D on the next line right here. All right. So let me know in the comments if that concept, if it feels easier to you, let me know. If it feels more confusing than traditional note reading, let me know. Or let me know, if you can see the potential, but you'll need some practice. No one's going to pick that up lickety-split the very first time they hear it. But I'm going to do that one more time. And I'm just going to play the tune so you can hear it, but I want you to just try saying the numbers, up 2, down 2, whatever the interval is, okay? I'll do it a little bit slower, and I won't count out loud this time, just so you won't be interrupted. Okay, so one more time from the top. All right. Our very first note, we always just say the name of the first note because there's no interval to compare. We haven't moved yet. We haven't gone anywhere. The interval's between two things. Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. C. Okay, and we'll stop right there. Okay, intervallic reading can also be useful for reading chords, all right? So what we just did was a linear intervallic reading. We were reading across the horizon, left to right. When we do intervallic reading for chords, we're doing vertical reading. So we're reading from bottom to top. And of course that's a preference. You could read from top to bottom. But what I have found in music is that even if you don't really understand music theory that well, the bass note, the bottom note, is truly the harmonic function of the notes that are being played. So even though the melody may be in the top and that's much easier for you to sing, when you're reading music at the piano or sight reading, it's the bass note that's the most important to really get the feel and the sound of the particular arrangement you're playing. And the reason you want to target the bass note is most people have a dominant hand of the right hand, so your left hand tends to be less dominant. Now, if you're left-handed, I'm not left-handed, so I can't speak from first-hand experience on that thing. But it is harder for most people to read the bass clef and get their pinky in the correct bottom note as they're reading music. When you start the piece, it's not that hard, but as you continue to read, more people struggle to read the bass clef than they do the treble clef. So I tell people, and I do this myself, I read from the bottom up. So let's look at this first example. Okay, and we're going to read the chord as a set of intervals. Okay, so that bottom note is F. Okay, and I'll switch to my keyboard in just a moment to show you. All right, but from the bottom note, if we count up to the next note, it works the same way. You start on the note you're reading from, F. That's the number 1, and then you count the lines and spaces going up. So from F, the next note is up 3, and then the next note above that is up 3. All right, and then it's harder to read the interval between the C and the treble clef above it. That's probably not a beginner skill, so today we won't do that. We're just going to read the left hand, but it's totally possible. So from the bottom note F, we have a 3 up and 3 up above that. All right, and I'm going to switch to my keyboard so you can see that. It directly translates to the keyboard. Most people don't know, and it takes them a really long time to figure out, that the musical staff is a literal direct relationship to every note on the piano keyboard. It is designed to work together that way. But the reason you don't understand it, or it doesn't come like supernatural to everybody, is that the keyboard, if we go up, quote unquote, we're going to the right hand side. If we go down, we're going to the left hand side. But the staff, the staff, when we go up, we literally go up, we literally go down. But if you turn the staff this way, then it lines up perfectly with the keys on the keyboard. Now this graphical representation is out of scale, so it doesn't line up, but I will show that in a future episode so you can understand that better. But again, that was another aha moment I had when I saw, oh, there is literally a direct one-to-one mapping between the line and the space I'm seeing up top to the location on the keyboard. Most people will teach you, oh, this note is on the first line, that's an E, so memorize that's an E. And like, yes, that's a great place as a beginner to start because you don't need to know all these other things. But soon enough, as you've tried to read music, I don't know if you've tried for years or a week, or every year you try for 2 days and then you give up. When you don't understand the actual relationship between the musical staff and the design of the physical instrument you're playing, you're just like swimming upstream. As soon as you understand there is literally a direct relationship, it's like, aha, oh my God, why did nobody say that? And I'm sure some teacher says that somewhere, but I didn't learn it for a really long time, which is why I like to share that early in the process. So let's just continue focusing on intervallic reading with the left hand. I'm going to just show you visually first on the keyboard, and then we'll switch back to the music, just so you get a chance to compare the two. And then the next time we talk about this topic, I'll have my view set up where you can see them at the same time. Okay, so starting note is F. Okay, and I'm just going to read the intervals and show you on the keyboard, and then we'll swap. So F, up 3, up 3. The next example starts on E, up 5, up 2. And remember, our lever in our mind, all our B's had been flatted or turned to the left. So E, up 5, up 2. All right, and then we return to the first chord, which was F on the bottom, up 3, up 3. Let's look at that in the score so you can give it a try. Okay, so our bottom starting note is F. There's the position on the keyboard, so this is just 5 notes, 5 keys below middle C. All right, so place your pinky on that F, and I'll switch back to the keyboard so you can get your hand set up. So there's our F, 5 notes below middle C. Keep your pinky there and keep it stationary. Okay, so now play the bottom note and count the interval for the next note above it, which is A, so that's up 3. And then the next note above that is up 3. Okay, and now just play them all together as a chord. Okay. And now try the next set of notes by yourself. Okay, so the bottom note is E. Count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the B flat. All right, and then up 2. So starting on B flat is 1, up one more is C, so up 2 to C. All right, and now play them all together. All right, and then try the last chord again. Try this one totally by yourself. All right, I'll play the sound without saying anything. Okay, so reading intervals for the chords, now that's a lot harder than reading the melody. So linear intervals, intervals that move from note to note over time, they're easier because you're only reading one note at a time and you're reading the space between them. Vertical interval reading, it's not that it's necessarily harder, but there's no visual space between each note and there's no time space because you're literally playing all 3 notes at the same time. So you have to be able to process that information faster to be able to do it. Now the good news is when you're looking at vertical intervals like chords, you will notice pretty quickly there's only a couple patterns to choose from. And most often, it's combinations of 3s, so maybe 3 and 3, 3 up and 3 up. Maybe it's 3 up, 4 up, and occasionally it's, maybe 5 up and 2 up, something of that nature. There's really only 4 or 5 combinations that most music will use. And once you begin to master the skill, you can do it a lot faster because you're not thinking, oh, that's an F, that's an A, that's a C, that's a B flat. Like, you're just using numbers. You've used numbers your entire life. You already know how to count. Like, intrinsically, it's not a skill you have to think about. You're literally reading the distance between the notes. So that's a direct one-to-one relationship between the visual location on the music and the visual location on the keyboard. And, before you know it, you're just able to see it and do it. This is where we're trying to get to, just see it and do it without having to consciously think. But when you read every single note, you'll never reach a point, there is no point, where you can literally read every note and produce it at literally the same time. That's why in my book I talk about the importance of music theory, and on this show I try to teach like a little bit every time because music theory can feel very overwhelming to people. But personally, I studied music theory for 4 years in my bachelor's degree, 2 years in my master's degree, and probably 3 years of my doctorate degree process. I don't have my doctorate, but I got pretty close to the end of that. But that's a long way of saying, and I also took piano lessons 15 years before I went to college. There is no point that you're going to reach where you magically are reading the name of every single note. It does not happen. It doesn't work that way. So you may feel, a lot of people will feel like, well, gosh, am I not smart enough to do this? Like, is there something wrong with my ability? Because I've been working on this a long time and that's just not working. And, a lot of teachers, not to say every teacher, there's plenty of great teachers in the world, but a lot of teachers will not teach the music theory approach to things because they're either uncomfortable with it. They can do it well because they've practiced these things forever, but they have a hard time explaining it to beginners because music theory is kind of like a rabbit hole. When you learn one thing, you need like the second thing to understand the first thing, but then you need the third thing to understand the second thing. So like before you know it, it's like you've learned a lot of information that's not super useful. It's like great if you're playing Jeopardy, but like it's not going to work in real time sight reading the music. So this approach I'm trying to explain to you is really whittling out literally what do you need to know to produce this in real time. That is what I care about, because for me that was the struggle I had. And there's a million people on YouTube that will teach you how to read music, but you won't find a lot that are teaching you how to do it in real time. Like, what are they actually thinking when they're doing this in real time? Okay, so not to be on a soapbox about it, but you get what I'm saying. Okay, so let's try this example together. We're going to go from, we'll do the whole piece. It won't take that long. Okay, try your best to just say out loud the intervals, 4 up, 4 down. If you get lost, that's okay. Stop counting and saying anything for a measure or two and come back in when you're ready. That's kind of another critical thing to know, is that there's nothing bad about making a quote-unquote mistake when you read music. The skill you will continually have to work on is not having a physical reaction to making the mistake. We want to be very neutral and very detached from the outcome of playing the piano when we're sight reading and reading music. It's, we won't get into all that today, but the emotional aspect and like this sort of internal dialogue of, I'm not good enough, I'm making a mistake, why can't I do this? That is always what is stopping people from actually being able to do the skill. So we're going to do this one more time. I'm going to put us in practice mode. I'm going to do the whole piece. I'm going to have you only focus on the top staff, the right hand. We start on the note C, so you're going to say C, and then you can say up 4, or you can just say the number 4, whatever you're comfortable with. But I'm going to say the direction up or down and the number as we play it. Okay, I'm going to do it a little bit slower than 80. Okay, and here we go. We're going to do it in assess mode. We're going to do it in prepare mode because it gets out of sync when I let Piano Marvel be the driver on my live stream. Okay, so we're going to do this. And let me just refresh my connection. Again, if you're just joining in, I jumped right into this live stream before I was ready this morning, and that never is smooth. So let me just connect my Bluetooth connector real fast. All right, I'm going to my Bluetooth connector. If you don't know what that is just is a way to connect your MIDI keyboard wirelessly, which is super slick if you've never experienced that before. But it does, you have to do it every time you connect your keyboard. Okay, so here we go. We're going to do this in prepare mode. All right, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. C, up 4, same. Oh, and it's not responding to me for some reason. You know what? We're not going to worry about Piano Marvel. We're just going to do the skill together. Okay? So I'm going to make that a little smaller so we can see a little bit more of the music. But if it's too small, it's hard to read the intervals when the staff is too small. You probably already figured that out. Okay, starting on middle C. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. C, up 4, same, up 3, down 2, up 2, down 2, 3, same, up 3, up 2, same, down 2, down 3, same, down 3, up 2, down 2, up 2, down 2, down 2, down 3, same, down 2, up 4, and we'll pause there. Okay, so I hope you have found that helpful today. That is not necessarily a starting place for a beginner, but if you have found that over the years you keep working on trying to memorize where are the notes on the staff, why are the notes different in the treble clef and the bass clef, and like you just keep like struggling to just understand the placement of the notes, intervallic reading eliminates all of that. The one downside to reading intervals is that if you get off, like say you're reading through this thing and you thought it was up 5, but really it was up 4. So now you're like off by 1. You'll continue to be off by 1 as you read the rest of the piece, which is nothing to worry about because you're still actually practicing the skill of intervallic reading. That the outcome is the same. Even if you messed up one of them and you read the rest of them correctly, you are reading the intervals correctly, but you are translating it in your hand to the keyboard off by 1 key, which is really not that big a deal if your intention for your practice that day is intervallic reading. Okay, so give that a shot this week as you're working on things. You will find that this is easiest in key signatures that people typically say are easy, like C major, F major, G major. Basically, people say a key signature is easy when there's like 3 sharps or flats or less in the key. I don't really subscribe to the idea of one is easier than the other because my actual goal when I'm teaching sight reading to people is you should actually be able to sight read something in C flat, which is 7 flats, just as easily as C major, which is no flats. And using this lever technique, it literally is just as easy to read those 2 keys. There's no difference in the placement of the notes on the staff. It's the understanding of the key signature that's different. Zauberhoff asked a quick question here, and let's answer that if we can. Hold on, let me hit that one more time. Can you show the finger setting changes from the 1E F to the 2E chord B flat? Pinky on the lowest E, second E chord, on the first chord F. Okay, I think I understand what you're saying, so I'm going to show that. So the sound of that, I think what you're asking, and just let me know if you're not quite asking this, you're saying in these first 3 measures, looking at the left-hand part, the chords, can you show how the hands move? What is the fingering or the placement of the fingers? There's actually these little numbers here below the notes that'll tell you the correct placement. But the thing about reading fingering from sheet music, that's what the editor of this music chose to do. There is no such thing as right or wrong fingering. It's what works for your hand, the size and shape of your hand. There's certainly better fingerings and there's typical correct fingerings. But there's not like a right or wrong. But let's look at the keyboard. What it's telling you to do is to play 1, 3, 5, and then on the next chord, 1, 2, 5. And when I say these numbers, I mean the numbers of your fingers. Your thumbs are always 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, respectively. And the editor in this piece is saying play 1, 3, 5, 1, 2, 5, and return to 1, 3, 5. There's nothing wrong with that, and almost every beginner will use that fingering. A more advanced player might play 4, 2, 5, 1, 2, 5, 4, 2, 5. Well, why would they do that? Why is that different? This is not necessarily more comfortable. I don't know that I would choose to do that. But you'll notice when I played it, I literally don't have to lift my hand off the keys, and I don't have to move it left to right at all. There's a 100% conservation of motion. My hand does not have to move at all. My finger is just going up or down. And that's the ideal state of playing anything, because the less we move our physical body, the easier it is to do motions more quickly or more smoothly, which is kind of the end goal. Okay, so to answer your question, Zauberhoff, what I would do what the editor has put in this piece, just because instinctively over the many years of practice, that is what typical fingering would be for that. But you know, the thing I would tell you as a person learning this that you won't hear other places, take your right hand, put it around your wrist. Let me see if I can show that in a camera. Actually physically hold your wrist. And what this will do is prevent you from moving your arm. You will not be able to move your arm. So now you've eliminated that choice from your thinking, from your pattern, like the habits in your mind. Okay, so you're not going to try to move your arm left or right at all. So now all you can do is extend the muscles and the bones in your fingers. Okay, which I know that probably sounds woo-woo when you hear it the first time. But what it's doing is it's forcing you to choose the most conservative path of motion. There's no other choice around it because you've been handicapped to a limited choice, which will force you to do one of those two options that I just showed you. Although the second option I showed you where we did 4, 2, 5, it is smoother. You will feel a tension in your wrist. As soon as you separate fingers 4 and 3, you will flex a muscle right here in your wrist. That will be very unnatural because there is almost no action you do in life where like, let me get my camera right, where we do this. Like when you try to do the Vulcan Star Trek symbol, there's a reason that's unnatural because it's not a natural motion of your hands at all, and it will feel weird every time you do it unless you practice doing this a lot. And as a pianist over the years, you'll actually do finger exercises to train your hands to be more independent. And anybody can get there. It's just a matter of repetition. It's not hard. But you'll feel that the spreading of those two fingers, you'll flex a muscle in your wrist and it will just feel wrong. So I hope that answered your question. Stan, I see your comment too. Useful techniques, thanks. Yeah. Again, my aim is to try to tell you the things that, let's not wait 20 years to learn the small kernel of knowledge that was like, aha, So we're going to wrap it up for today. If you're new here, thanks so much for joining. I try to really talk about sight reading and music reading in unique and different ways that you probably haven't heard. And today's show was not very typical. It's usually a lot smoother than this. But what I recommend you do, visit my website, oneminutemusiclesson.com. You can sign up for my newsletter if you just want to get on the list, or more importantly than that, just subscribe and ring the little bell here on YouTube. You'll just get a notification when we go live every Saturday, 10 a.m. Central Time, which is the time zone of Chicago. I live 2 hours below Chicago, south. I said that to a friend from Germany the other day, and they laughed. They were like, "What do you mean below Chicago?" Like, that's like a thing, like below versus south. Anywho, the last thing I'll tell you before we run out of time today, I'm launching a live Zoom group piano class where we'll do similar things like this. If you want to learn about that, just visit my website, oneminutemusiclesson.com. You'll see a thing right there on the homepage about it. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more to my newsletter for the next 2 weeks. But the class is going to be very limited. It's the first time I'm doing this kind of thing, so there's only 30 spots. So if you're interested in that, check that out, because I do think the seats are going to fill up relatively quick. I've already got 6 requests to hold a spot. So that's going to be it for today. To wrap up the show, I always like to say thank you so much to our patrons. You are what is helping us achieve our mission to teach musical literacy to the world. And without the support of our patrons, our show is just not possible. If you like today's show, just visit oneminutemusiclesson.com/support. There's so many ways to support us that's not just financial. Giving us a like or a thumbs up, that matters tremendously on YouTube. But that page will explain, what can you do if you like today's show. Okay, so that's going to be it for today. Thank you all so much for spending your hour with me today, and I look forward to seeing you next week on another episode of In Tune. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great one. Bye-bye.